people's listening habits? What are you preparing for in, for the next 2 years, 3 years? What's the next big thing to look forward to?
See, the biggest challenge is and will remain the content. The content creation, the content gathering process. That will remain the biggest headache for us, I think, for coming 50 years as well. So, good content creation is what we are looking at only. Also, one of the topics, one of the earlier thoughts that our fellow panelists have shared, that radio is one-way medium, right? You create the content and your listeners are listening to it. If we make it interactive, and that's what we are doing as well.
So the monkey bar becomes 2 ways.
Yeah. So, this is what we are doing as well through Circa, that we are engaging the listeners to the radio, back to the radio stations, that whoever is listening to your program will be able to send you a feedback based on the listening, right? And you can improve upon your content based on his or her recommendation, or if he likes your content, that's well and good. You can start that content that this is the content that's liked by the listeners. So,
like the Uber rating apps that you have, you're giving stars at the end of every drive.
Something sort of that.
So there'll be a daily appraisal then, Anindita, not just a session appraisal that you're talking about.
We are in a lot of ways. Okay, we'll be gathering points.
You just wanted to add a quick point.
Just want to add a point based on what the panel was about. I don't think we are competing with radio as such, or with community radio. I think as podcasters, we have actually a lot to learn from the community radio, because they are the first ones who have, created content in a very niche way, which is what podcast is all about. It's about finding niches and catering to your listeners' interests. So the way I look at it, and I'm really glad and honored to be in this festival, is that, for me, there's a lot of learning to do from the community radio, from the radio world itself. And I think we need to acknowledge that as podcasters, as podcast platform creators, that, we can never compete with radio. And ultimately, I honestly hope that in the future, in a few months, in the next few years, there'll be a much more collaborative efforts that will come out, with between podcasts and with community radio.
We hope so too. In fact, Archana here does a lot of community radio work, and I've seen this power of community radio in places like Nepal, in far-flung hilly areas, where mainstream media does not reach, where the government administration is questionable. Community radio does an immense, powerful job. I'm ready to take in questions. Yes, is there a mic that we can pass on, please? If you could just tell us who's the panelist you would like the answer from.
Hello. So I am Abhishek Singh. I study in Indian Mass Communication, and my question is to ma'am, and she is the head of Northeast Radio Maturity. We all of us want to become a sporting nation. We all, try to do well in Olympics and all that sort of stuff. When it comes to sports, we hardly see it on radio. Maybe the sports are updated. I know you cannot run a live commentary because that's from the government. They do not allow you. But since the technology has improved, I think, and football being one of the most famous sports in Northeast, so that question was to you. You can at least run a podcast or something like that based on like the attendance we see in I-Leagues and all that sort of things. Maybe people in Nepal or in Aizawl want to see or want to hear more of sports. Like a cable channel in Aizawl almost turned out a league based out of sports. So I think radio can do a thing like that in sports.
If content is king, are you paying attention to something as important?
Yeah, of course, we've got a couple of stations in Northeast. We are aware of this. Just as a point, right now we are 70% radio and 30% others. Our board has actually told us to become 50% radio and 50% other platforms. So yes, we are actually launching our podcast business very soon. I can't give you more details, but I will take that feedback, and you will see more niche content coming out of Richie.
Hello everyone, my name is Ashutosh Kumar and I am from IIT School of Communication. My question is, I know that आप लोगों ने बहुत सारे कंटेंट्स यहाँ पे डिलीवर किए हैं, बट वन ऑफ द मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट थिंग जो मुझे लगता है कि पूछना चाहिए कि हमें पढ़ाया गया है कि हमारे कंट्री में सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी थ्योरी, जो कि मास मीडिया थ्योरी है, सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी थ्योरी रख देती है. मतलब यहाँ पर गवर्नमेंट की बॉस की तरफ मीडिया काम नहीं करती है, गवर्नमेंट के सपोर्ट्स में भी काम करती है. एंड कहीं ना कहीं हमें ये भी पढ़ाया गया है कि बिफोर इंडिपेंडेंस जर्नलिज्म वाज अ मिशन, बट आफ्टर इंडिपेंडेंस नाउ इट्स बिकेम अ प्रोफेशन, और ये अपनी इंडस्ट्री चला रहा है। और कहीं ना कहीं हम अगर हम कहीं ना कहीं गवर्नमेंट एंड मीडिया को कंपेयर करते हैं तो हमें हमेशा ये कंक्लूजन मिलता है कि मीडिया जो है वो गवर्नमेंट के इशारों पे काम कर रही है, जनरली देखा जाता है। तो आपका इसमें क्या कहना है कि ये सत्य है या फिर असत्य?
नहीं, देखिए, इसमें सत्य असत्य दोनों हैं, और मैं तो न्यूज इंडस्ट्री से आती हूँ, लेकिन मुझे लगता है यहाँ जो अभी पैनल डिस्कशन हम कर रहे हैं इससे थोड़ा सा परे है आपका सवाल। लेकिन ये है कि देखिए, हम जब रेडियो और ऑडियो की बात करते हैं, हम इसे सिर्फ न्यूज तक सीमित नहीं रख रहे हैं, हम इसे मास मीडिया की नजरों से देख रहे हैं। और जो टीवी न्यूज को जो आजादियां हैं इस देश में, वो रेडियो को नहीं है। बट रेडियो अपने तरीके से जो है, भले ही किसी को कटघरे में ना खड़े, लेकिन नीतियों को उजागर जरूर कर सकता है। कविता, would you like to add?
Actually, you're right about the fact that we can't really apply like journalism. I mean, the fact that yes, we're looking at doing more news this year. We're looking to doing more politics, and that's something that I think radio stations can't. And that actually is a huge differentiator for us. And trying to make our way through that space right now is challenging because currently news is being consumed to newspapers and television. Radio stations, not that much. AIR and Prasar Bharati are your only sources. But yes, we want to have more challenging conversations around that space and give a more well-rounded experience and not just use podcasting for an infotainment perspective.
Just to answer your question, I think it's important when we're talking about media and its independence and its freedom to also talk about funding. And the fact remains that a lot of the media, there has been rapid corporatization that has happened. So if you as an audience member want platforms like us to stay independent, you also have to come up and support us. And that is the model to go. Frankly, like if you look at how it has become in the US, there has been an increase of almost, I think, 60% or so, where readers, listeners, viewers are contributing towards independent media to make sure that media stays independent. And I think that's where people sitting in this audience can actually support platforms to stay independent. Like we would really love to stay independent and have all editorial control. But the fact remains that we also have to pay salaries, we have to run bureaus, we have to pay camera people. So that's the reality of it.
मुझे लगता है कि वो महीने की 2 कप कॉफी कम करके अगर वो 300 रुपए किसी एक कंटेंट को सब्सक्राइब करने में लगा दें तो उससे भी थोड़ा फायदा होगा. Before I go to the lady there, and if you can just quickly add, it's a relevant question. While we're talking about content, in India you have a scenario where radio and audio is not really doing the news bit of it. It's not really scrutinizing the government policies. That's left to mainstream media in television, in print. Do you think that that's a policy that needs revision for us? How has it worked in the European airways?
Well, I don't want to interfere in your discussions around policies here, but of course it seems logical that all media should be able to discuss all sorts of issues that are of interest to the people. So if you are a mass medium, you want to tap into your audience and you want to be able to discuss the topics that they're interested in, whether they are very down to earth or whether it's more about how the nation or the city is managed or and so forth. So it would be a logical point of view to have all media being able to have open discussions, I think, in a free society. That's my point. And in many countries it is, in many countries it isn't. Many countries are even worse off than we're talking about now. So, but of course that is what you would like to see, isn't it?
Absolutely.